how was it that these cabins were built with only an initial investment of $50,000 and then less than 2 years later had made their owner over $7 million? To make their owner $7 million in just 2 years, these cabins would need to be bringing in over $291,000 every single month, or just shy of about $10,000 a day. And if you think that that's impossible, then you'd be right, sort of. But there's actually another way. You see, these cabins were built by a guy named Isaac French. And having seen thousands of people try, succeed, and fail at Airbnb over the last several years, when I heard about Isaac's story, I got really curious. So I spent the last few days doing some digging, and I uncovered a few secrets that are pretty shocking, to say the least. Isaac did a few things with this project that were really smart and allowed him to accomplish the nearly impossible. There are 5 parts that you need to understand. Each piece will give you the key to understanding the next, and ultimately, you'll discover how making millions with real estate is not about getting lucky. I first came across these cabins about a year ago when I started seeing them pop up all over social media. Everyone was talking about this guy who had built a sort of tiny cabin resort just outside of Texas. I saw that the properties were doing well, but I didn't realize just how well they were doing until I recently came across this interview.
Ended up grossing over $1 million the first year, net over $500,000, averaged 94% occupancy overall across all units.
Yeah, we'll get back to those numbers in a minute. But first, we need to talk about how Isaac even purchased this property in the first place with only $50,000. Because as you could imagine, you can't exactly walk into a bank and just ask them for a few $1 million to fund your one-of-a-kind tiny cabin resort project in the middle of nowhere. What you can do, however, is get what's called a construction loan. And that's the first brilliant and admittedly somewhat risky thing that Isaac did. Instead of waiting years to save up the money to buy the land and create this project, Isaac used leverage. You see, Isaac's dad is a general contractor, so together they drew up a plan for the project and took it to some local banks. Now, the way he made this work is actually pretty genius. Isaac wasn't buying a property, he was buying empty land. So when he went to the bank, he basically had to say, here's the plan for what we're going to build. And then it was up to the bank to decide how much that project would be worth once it was actually finished. And then if the bank felt confident that Isaac would actually build the project and succeed with his plan, then they'd give him a loan. Now, understandably, a few banks just flat out said no, but Isaac didn't let that deter him. He went to 3 different banks, and the third one said yes. They valued his project at $1.6 million and agreed to lend him 80% of that, about $1.3 million. Now, if you're keeping track of the math, that still leaves Isaac about $300,000 short of what it's going to take for him to build. And although that's a lot better than $1.6 million, it's still a far cry from the $50,000 that he had to invest. And that's where partnerships came into play. Isaac partnered up with his dad and his brother and cut them in on the deal. In exchange, they agreed to provide access to a $500,000 line of credit that his dad had for his contracting business. So now the trio was able to use $50,000 of their own money, plus $1.3 million from bank number 1, who provided the construction loan, plus $500,000 from bank number 2, who gave his dad the line of credit. Like I said before, genius. And definitely a little bit risky. So now they've got the money and it's time to actually build. Isaac's dad had his own general contracting business, so this kind of a project was far from uncharted territory for them. They got to work, and honestly, from the sounds of it, this part of the project actually went really smoothly. This is another element of Isaac's overall strategy that was actually pretty brilliant. By partnering with his dad, he not only got access to a whole bunch of additional capital, he also got to benefit from his dad's expertise. Anytime you can gain expertise from someone who's been there and done that, you eliminate risk while at the same time increasing your odds of success. That's exactly what I've done along my journey, and it's paid off. When I first got started on Airbnb, I partnered with property owners and managed their properties before eventually buying properties of my own. When I first bought my own property, I partnered with other investors for the first time instead of doing it myself. And now that I've got more experience under my belt, I partner up with other people so they can learn to do things like what Isaac's doing, building up their income streams with short-term rentals. I call it B&B Tribe. And if you're interested in joining the community, check out the website bnbmastery.com/BNB-tribe, and you can see exactly what we're up to. I'll leave the link in the description below this video as well, so you can check it out and see if it's a good fit for you. But because Isaac partnered with his dad and GC'd the project himself, they were able to save about 30% off of what they would have paid had they hired an outside general contractor. Not only that, but they were able to complete the entire project in just 9 months. Which, if you've ever done a renovation before, you'll know that's a pretty insane timeline. It also helped quite a bit that this property is located in Texas, where there's a pretty minimal amount of red tape restricting builders. But what really impressed me about this portion of the project was just how meticulous Isaac was about every single detail. The project ended up going about $400,000 over budget. And with the amount of leverage they had, I'm sure that wasn't exactly stress-free. But Isaac kept his cool and refused to cut corners, which, as you'll see in a minute, really ended up paying off. I mean, just look at this place. From the landscaping to the layout to the interior design, these guys really nailed it. They created a beautiful property, sure, but more than that, they created a one-of-a-kind experience for every single guest. Every detail, from the beautiful pond to the kayaks to the shipping container swimming pool, are so unique and elevate this place to an entirely different league. All right, so now 9 months after first breaking ground, it was finally time to launch the property on Airbnb. But what should have been a huge moment of celebration and the payoff for all of their hard work quickly turned into an absolute nightmare. Within days of listing on Airbnb, Isaac's entire account got shut down with no warning and no explanation whatsoever from Airbnb. This left Isaac with a huge pile of loan payments and upkeep expenses and virtually no income. Scrambling to figure this out and get his properties relisted, Isaac reached out to Airbnb, but to no avail. With his back against the wall, Isaac decided to set up a direct booking website and try promoting the property on social media. To his surprise, a $900 social media promotion generated over $40,000 in direct bookings. This was a huge breakthrough for Isaac because it taught him an incredibly important lesson in diversification. Rather than relying solely on Airbnb to generate bookings, Isaac started to focus more on social media. Within a few months of launching, more than 70% of his bookings were coming in directly, meaning outside of Airbnb. This meant more stability because he wasn't at risk of being shut down on Airbnb, more profit because he wasn't paying 15% to Airbnb, and most importantly, more data. Because the majority of his guests now book through his website, Isaac was able to collect data from those guests, such as their email addresses. This allowed him to retarget those guests and get them to book with him again in the future. And as you'll see in a minute, this actually ended up making Isaac millions. So now the property is up and running. It's doing well. Bookings are coming in and Isaac is making a profit, but he's still a long way from $7 million. If all 7 cabins get booked, the entire property brings in about $3,000 to $5,000 a night. After paying all the expenses like cleaning, maintenance, and loan payments, they're still coming out ahead, but only to the tune of about $500,000 a year. Which, don't get me wrong, that's a lot of money. But the title of this video says $7 million, and gosh darn it, we are gonna get there. But before we uncover that final secret, there's one more genius move that Isaac made along the way, and it has to do with old Uncle Sam. You see, most people don't realize that short-term rentals can also have some pretty serious tax benefits if you structure it the right way. By using this property as a short-term rental, Isaac was able to have what's called material participation in the property. That means that any losses the property makes can be used to draw down his taxable income for the year. And in this case, although the property made $500,000 in profit, Isaac also used something called bonus depreciation to declare about $1 million in losses. Now, to be clear, these are not real losses. Isaac didn't actually have $1 million leave his bank account, but because his properties have a lot of high-end finishes, he's able to say that these finishes lost value over the course of the year and use that to declare a tax loss. So where normal people would make $500,000 and pay about 30% of that in taxes, Isaac pays zero, and he does it completely legally. Now, at this point, it's probably become pretty obvious to you that Isaac is a pretty smart guy. So far, he's gone from $50,000 to $500,000 in right around a year. But old Isaac saved his best trick for last. Isaac's final move with this property was to sell it for more than twice what it was worth. You see, in most cases, real estate sells for roughly what an appraiser says that it's worth. And an appraiser is basically just a guy or a gal who goes out, looks at what other properties have sold for in the area, and figures out a best guess for what the property in question is worth. But that's how properties are sold, not businesses. And what Isaac built was irrefutably a business. Sure, it was a business with property, but it was a business nonetheless. And in the world of buying and selling businesses, there's a really important little thing called a multiple. Multiples are the way that businesses are valued, and it works something like this. Say you've got a business that generates $1,000 a year in profit. If it's a crappy business with lots of risk that takes a lot of work for you to run, I might only pay you $1,000 for it. That'd be a 1 times multiple. Annual net profit multiplied by 1. But let's say it's a great business with well-diversified risk, like Isaac's, where most of the day-to-day operations are pretty automated. Well, in that case, I might be willing to pay you $7,000 for it. That'd be a 7 times multiple. Now, the cool thing about having a business with a 7 times multiple is that every extra dollar you make isn't just worth $1 anymore. It's actually now worth 7. For example, if you take that same business that's generating $1,000 a year in profit and you manage to make an extra $1,000 before selling it to me, well, sure, you made an extra $1,000, and that's great and all. But now if I'm buying it at a 7 times multiple, I'm actually going to be paying you $14,000 for the business instead of 7. And that, in a nutshell, is exactly what Isaac did. Isaac managed to crank the profitability of his business up through the roof by keeping the property booked and offering add-on services and upsells like early check-ins and birthday packages. Then he found a big investor who was willing to give him a 6.5 times multiple on the property, and he sold it for $7 million. Only 2.5 years after buying it, with less than 50 grand. If you liked this video and you want to see more videos like it, then hit subscribe and give it a thumbs up. Here's another video that I think you'll like. And of course, check out B&B Tribe at the link in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.